Welcome to Modern Day Messengers, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Episode, yeah.
Episode 20.
Yeah.
I think it's 20. Anyway, so we just got done with recording an episode with your wife.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
It was really cool. I hope you guys liked it. But we just got through the Forge conference in Monroe.
West Monroe?
West Monroe.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. What was the church?
It was First West.
First West.
First West.
That's right. So I want to give you guys a little bit of that. If you haven't gone to a Forge conference, it was very, very cool.
Yeah, it was directly geared toward men. It was really good. They said they're gonna have another one this time, or maybe again next year.
Next year, definitely put it on your calendars for around this time to go do it. I don't know. I guess they put on the dates closer to time, but they had 4 speakers: Jared Stevens, Gavin
Spinny, I believe. Spinny.
Jace Robertson, and Jonathan Evans. So we were really excited to see all those guys. The only one I haven't met before was that Jarrett guy. But I have met Gavin. I haven't met Jace personally, and that was my first time seeing Jonathan. But
It was fun.
very cool speakers. We'll kind of recap a little bit of that. But they did these. They call them breakouts.
Yeah, breakout sessions.
Yeah, up there, and you can only do.
One.
You could only do one. I wanted to do multiple ones, but there was only so much time. It was a 1-day conference.
Well, luckily we had like 4 people in our little group, so it was like, hey, let's all go to somewhere different.
Yeah,
and compare notes.
2 of them went to one.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they went to the financial one.
Oh, so they had leading when the nest is empty, which did not apply to us at all because our kids are still very young.
Yeah,
So I don't think none of us went to that. Spiritual disciplines,
yeah, I wanted to go to that one.
biblical masculinity. That's the one I went to.
Yep,
Faithful in finances, which is Chad and Brandon went to that
and they
one.
went to that one.
Faithful as a father
I went to that one.
and leading in marriage.
I wanted to go to that one.
I wanted to go to all of them besides the empty nest thing.
So
like
it would be really cool to do like a 2-day conference, but they only did one. But anyway, check it out. Devin wanted to advertise and push this right here, Miss K's Duck Commander Kitchen.
Yeah, so by the way, we are not paid sponsors. We don't get paid if you go buy it because you saw it on the show. They didn't ask us to do this, nothing like that. You know, as we've done before, we just put stuff up there that we use that we like. And
I forgot my orange juice in the other room.
did you?
Oh well,
Terrible.
I know. Keep going.
But so I put that there because we got it, and me and my wife have actually cooked a few things out of it, and everything that we have cooked out of that thing has been a banger.
Yeah, now check this out.
Like it's been
You gotta
good.
go. You gotta go try this. We haven't tried it yet, but we went and do the duck tour yesterday,
Yeah.
and at one of the ending things, I'm not gonna spoil any of it, but there's a video of Miss K making biscuits, and she
There's a secret ingredient
There's a
that
secret
happens to be
ingredient.
in that book also.
yeah, there's a secret ingredient. You would never guess what it is, but would you tell them?
Nope.
Okay,
You gotta buy the book.
Yeah,
No, but like I said, we're not getting paid for it. We wasn't sponsored, nothing like that. We just really enjoy the book, and if there's something we enjoy, like we've done Black Rifle Coffee before,
Yeah.
it's just something that we enjoy that we would just want to share with y'all. And like
we think
Me and
y'all
Chris-
might enjoy it.
me and Chris, we've made the meatloaf, we've made sweet potato pie, we made some kind of, it was like some shrimp and bread. I don't remember what it was called, but that was delicious. All right, we made quite a few things out of it already, and man, they've all been bangers.
Good, very good.
And then we made some chicken, like what do you call it? I don't remember. It was like chicken with the Parmesan cheese on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good too.
Chicken parm.
Yeah. No, it wasn't chicken parm. I'm about to throw this out. Yeah, forgive me. I'm gonna turn it off now.
Go ahead,
I
bro.
did that on the last podcast. It hadn't gone off at all day, which is unusual. But as soon as we start recording,
Yeah, his phone blows up so much. I don't even know. Mine's right here, actually. I was like, where is it?
no, but the conference was really good. I mean, it was definitely needed, especially with, and we've talked about this before. I think men are just getting weaker and weaker, especially when it comes to things like masculinity and spirituality.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about how you want to talk about the breakouts first, or do you want to talk about?
Actually, I can talk about the breakout. I mean, that's cool.
Let's do that first. You'll talk about yours, and I took a few notes for mine too.
So the one I went to was, like I said, biblical masculinity, and that's just where I'm at in life right now, where I'm really passionate about that. I'm tired of seeing men that are weak,
Right.
and so I've been immersing myself a lot of that. I've been watching Kyle Thompson's Undaunted Life podcast, that's all it's about. It's about being a biblical man.
Right.
And when I saw this, I was like, I've got to go to that. Well, it was taught by Casey Johnson, and if I remember right, I could be wrong on this, so don't quote me. I believe he's like the pastor of a church out there in Bastrop.
Okay.
But I mean, he did an incredible job. He gave some stories about a guy who was a Navy SEAL. I can't remember the name, but he was manly man. But he was like 5'6", 5'7". He was on a tank. He was shooting. This was back in World War II. He was shooting some Nazi soldiers, and he had bombs and everything blowing up on him. The tank that he was on, the mounted gun, caught on fire, and he kept on it until he caught an airstrike. He ended up calling an airstrike on himself and left before it went off. And I mean, so
That's some
I
real
think
life Rambo.
I think he's accounted to killing over 100 Nazi soldiers.
Dude, that's some real life Rambo stuff.
Yeah, like straight gangster on it. But I mean, that's just not what he was just talking about being necessarily just a biblical man in general. He was just using that as an example. But
Right.
I mean, that is very manly.
Yeah.
But it was, and he used that to kind of break down some characteristics of some Navy SEALs and being a man. And one of them was build a culture of loyalty and trust. Being a man requires excellence, not only of you, but of the people you're around. It's not asking for perfection, but excellence.
Yeah.
Foster a culture of self-control. So, and that kind of goes into the definition of meekness. So, and I've heard Kyle Thompson talk about this. He said a horse, one that's carrying a buggy, has the potential for great power. Like, if they run into you full speed, you're probably going to die. But that power is under control and brittled by the handler, right?
Right.
So meekness is having so much power, but having it in the right controlled environment. It requires discipline. You foster a culture of respect and teamwork. And he gave some Bible verses and kind of went on into stuff like that. But, I mean, it was just good because, I mean, and he talked about the current way the culture looks at men, and a man's attitude is toxic masculinity.
Right.
And that in itself is dumb. And I think people who say that are just following the crowd of what they hear.
Yeah.
Because masculinity is not toxic. Masculinity is a gift from God, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
Right.
Now, you can be a jerk. I'm not saying that. But if you have your masculinity rooted in God, and my masculinity is based off, first of all, I'm serving God,
Right.
and I'm taking the knowledge and power and just coverance of God's grace and majesty, and I'm using that to protect my family against physical attacks, against spiritual attacks, against mental attacks.
Yeah.
That is where real masculinity comes from.
Right. And we've kind of discussed this a little bit, but like the armor of God, there's a reason why it's like it's what Jonathan Evans said on the thing. He's like, what? He's like, hey, I got to put on armor. He's like, what you mean I got to put on armor? Well, because we're fighting a spiritual battle, and like you've got to be prepared for it. You know,
For sure.
So it's we're not called to be just sit back and get out of hell jail free card. It's not just believing in Jesus to be saved for yourself. I mean that's why Jesus came, but also, I mean, if I did that and I didn't share the good news with anybody else that I came into contact with, I am super selfish.
For sure.
It's all about spreading the good news. He's like, we'll get into all that, but what else did you have on that?
And the only other thing I was going to go over, and I'm not going to go over all his notes because I would do his little session that he did in Injustice if I tried.
Right.
All I can say is next time to have one go.
Yeah.
But he went over 3 different types of men. You've got one that's overly passive, and they don't like to lead. They're overly sensitive. They're just the weak men. Mm-hmm. Then he said you got overly aggressive men, and they're just consumed with dominance and strength and just,
Yeah.
Ooh, ooh, ah,
Yeah.
you're just trying to be big and bad. And then you have biblical men who have the knowledge of the Bible and Jesus Christ, and they apply that to their strengths, their courage, and humility. And he went over some characteristics of them. A biblical man leads. He leads himself, he leads his family, and he leads the people that he's discipling in a circle.
Right.
Provides. A biblical man provides, and he talks about, not only are you providing in the sense of money, but you're providing in the sense of bringing that spirituality to your family, making sure your family is provided with the knowledge of Jesus Christ, and that bleeds over to the people around you. Your inner circles. A biblical man protects, and that you know spiritual, mental, physical attacks.
Yeah.
And a biblical man is willing to die for their family.
Right.
And a lot of people, I mean, and I've seen a video, I don't know, maybe a year ago, that was and I know it was women in this video, but they were like, would you kill for your baby? And not a bunch of them were, no, I wouldn't kill for my baby. I call the police or, and that's not, I don't think that's just solely women. I think that's men too.
Yeah.
You wouldn't kill for your kids, or you wouldn't die to protect them.
Right.
But I think a biblical man would lay down his life for his family.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, dude.
Because even if I do die, like Jay said in his thing,
I'm coming back. I love that. I love that, dude. So mine, I went to the Faithful as a Father, and I already have a 2-year-old, and I've got another one on the way.
Isn't that what your shirt says or your hat?
My hat, yeah. I guess my mom got it. My hat. I'll wear it right here. It says "Daddy."
So dumb.
So anyway, I'm wearing it right now, but yeah, I got another one on the way. So I was like, you know what? I kind of felt drawn to doing the Faithful as a Father. This passage was on Psalm 127 a little bit. But he's talking about children, how they're a blessing, and not at all a curse. I even had, I actually had a gig last night. I played here at a local restaurant. And, I told him I got in a conversation with somebody, and she was like, well, she's like, she's like, you know what causes that? And I was like, oh, yeah. I know exactly what causes that, and she's like, well, you might as well just be done having kids. And I was like, well, I said, that's between me and God. It's, but it's so... people can have a negative view on having children, so that was kind of one of the things he brought up in his speech, or his lesson about this, about how kids are a blessing. It says in Genesis, go be fruitful and multiply. Their kids are such a blessing. So he kind of went over this. He said, Psalm 127, he said, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. I'm trying to figure out where he says right here. Right here, 3, verse 3. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with the enemies in the gate. So he kind of just read through that a little bit. And he said, children are kind of a product of our legacy. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but he's saying that there's a way that a father has to be, and it kind of ties into the biblical masculinity. As far as like having that mindset of protecting your family. And it went into it kind of branched off into this right here. I just, I noted right here, our kids know if we have a passion for Christ or not. They're like little sponges, and they absorb every single little thing they do, and we do. And you probably already picked up that they copy you in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
So,
My daughter is me made over, but in a girl form. I mean,
yeah, I can see that. You can't deny that.
that girl violent.
So, but how your kids will see how you have a passion for Christ, and a passion for your spouse. So they see you how much you love your wife. They see you how much you live for God. Are you in the Word? Are you pouring that into your family? Where are your priorities as far as that goes? He recommended a book called Better Man. I haven't looked into it just yet, but I will. Another example he gave was lead with love, and never forget to say it. I'm obviously paraphrasing this. This was like little scratch notes, and I can barely read them. I had them on my phone, and I had my little pen, but lead with love. Discipline is necessary, obviously, but don't forget to say it. He saw an example he gave is that the first time his dad ever told him he loved him was when he was like, when he became a deacon in the church, and it shocked him. He said that when his dad came up behind him and laid his hands on him and told him he loved him, he said it awoke something in him that he did not even know he was dealing with throughout the entire. So it affects your children. So make sure you say it, and it's not wrong to be positive, towards what they're doing as far as like leading with love. That's a manly thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not. Obviously, if they're trying to set fire to the house, obviously that's you're gonna be.
Mine hadn't tried to light the house on fire yet, but they have colored it with crayons.
Yeah, see something like that.
We haven't been in our house less than 2 years. They broke a handrail, tore the paint off of the bathroom wall.
Yep.
We've got a dent in our sheetrock. Crayon everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah. These little kids are destructive. They're 13 and 5, and they're acting like they're a demolition crew.
Yeah. So stuff like that. Yeah. It's a little aggravating, but you're going to deal with that. That's life.
All I know is I've seen it done on like commercials and other TV shows. When they get their own house, I'm going to their house. I'm having a bag of Cheetos. And then I'm just the one thing I'm gonna get them that they keep doing to me, or my son, when I go use their bathroom, I'm missing the toilet. Boy, look, I walked in the house one day. He's gonna beat me up one day when he gets older and watches this. And
Yeah.
Dad, why you tell that? But I walked in the house. I had to walk out. My eyes burned. I was like, "What is that smell?" Boy, missed his toilet all over.
Oh no,
Yeah, it was bad. So that boy, I had that boy on his hands and knees with some cleaning supplies.
Hey, that's it. That's
Like
how they
he's
learn.
scrubbing.
That's how they learn. Constructive. But another point was this: is how important it is to be there for your family. He said we've already established the fact that God is first. He said, he said that from the very beginning. He said, now on your other priorities, he said your wife. Obviously this was a men's conference, but likewise your husband. But he said your wife is your next priority. He said now your family in itself is a priority. Below God. And he said just as you would put something like this event on the calendar, he said put your family stuff on the calendar. He said it's that important that you're there. A father figure, I forget the statistics, but just in the design of humanity, we are called to be leaders, and it starts with the head of the house. And we're needed. We're super needed as that support.
Actually, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just something happened to me this morning that was just, I understand how important it is. And so like this morning, my little boy wakes up and Georgia said that he was a little groggy, and then I was cooking breakfast in the kitchen, and he heard me. He heard me and he said, there it is. But he heard me and he said, he's like, Daddy? And then Georgia said, yes, Daddy. And he rushed out of that bed. He came in the kitchen so fast, and he gave me a big old hug. And I was cooking eggs. He said, "Eggs," and I was like, "You want some eggs?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "How many you want?" He goes, "2." I said, "Okay." He ended up eating 4 eggs, and the dude is 2 years old.
Yeah, she had a house on. But the statistics you were talking about, this was actually not part of that conference. It's just something I was working on for the Men of Courage.
Yeah, right.
But 93% of families come to Christ if the husband leads by example, kind of thing. 17% of families come to Christ if it is the wife who comes to Christ first.
Right.
And only 3.5% of families come to Christ if it is the child that comes to Christ first.
Look, that's very low percentage. And even I would say this, even in that 17% with the wife, it's I would even say that and it kind of leads the man into that leadership role, because it's really hard for a wife to lead a family, because it's not designed to be that way.
Yeah, it's not.
Now, obviously, has a really super important role for support for the man, because I'd say part of my testimony, I haven't given it yet, but part of it was when I was in my wilding days and the alcohol and everything. She said, Georgia just looked at me, and this is when we both weren't living for Christ. She's like, "What are you doing this for?" And I never slowed down enough, because I was party like literally every day for a long time. And she just asked me that question. It's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "I don't know." It threw me for a loop, because I did not know until about maybe 8 months to a year later, and that question kept hitting on me. I was like, "Why am I doing this? Why?" Yeah. And so I started to like inwardly search myself, and I'm like, "Okay, why? Let's break it down. Like, why am I drinking, a half gallon of whiskey? Like, why am I doing all these drugs? Like, what's the purpose of it?" I came to the conclusion, I was like, I'm looking for something. And I'm like, what is it? It was peace. It was life that was more abundant than what I was creating for myself and the environment that I was putting myself in. A purpose. What is the meaning to life? Why what am I doing here? Am I just gonna die one day and just nothing happens? And so I grew up in church, and I finally had to come to the conclusion that I needed Jesus Christ. Amen. And so but it was the example of Georgia actually saying something to me, and about that, and I know it was God leading me back to Him. So, but another thing right here, a note that I had was prioritize their way in the Lord, and this is when he kind of put this in perspective in verse 4. He said, "Like arrows in the hand of a warrior." We're called to put on armor. We're warriors of Christ. We're in a spiritual battle. We know 2 Corinthians 10 says that we're in the flesh, but we don't war according to flesh. So, and the only way we can battle these things of the Spirit is if the Spirit is in us and we have the armor of God. And he said this. So the arrows, he said, so are the children of one's youth. Okay. So he put it in this perspective. He said, if you have a quiver of arrows, the arrows represent your children. And he said, when an archer draws back, right? He said, that's the amount of time that you have with your children. It's so, and you've heard this before, the older you get, the faster time flies. And people say that, that your kids will be grown up. It's like they're here today and gone tomorrow. It's just like they grow up so fast. So, hang on to this. But he said that puts it in perspective on how short your time is with your kids. He said, now it's our job to point them in the right direction. He said, because if it's just random or willy-nilly, then it won't go in the right direction. But it's our job to have that, to get them right, as closest to the mark as possible. Now he said, once that arrow's let go, when they leave the nest, you could say, but once that arrow is let go, obviously the wind, he said, it's like God and the Holy Spirit. He's like, it can get it back on track. But he said, how much harder is it to get back on track
It was never shot in the right direction.
if it was never shot in the right direction? That's right. And so, that's what he took out of this right here. He said, so the mark obviously is a relationship with Christ. So he said, point the arrows, your children, to Christ, and it's a lot more easier for them to get back on track. So, he said, don't neglect that, he also said, in Ephesians 4 talk about this as well, but talking about provoking your children to wrath, but bring them up in the ways of the Lord. Watch what we say in front of our kids. Negativity will spread. He said, this is what I do. He said, y'all may do it a little differently. He said, but this is what I felt like I was led to say about how he doesn't talk negative about the church or about like fellow believers or about really anything in front of his kids. He takes his wife aside if they have a problem with something, and he doesn't talk about it in front of the kids. And it was a really good example, and I think I want to implement this because how easily negativity spreads.
Well, I mean, you can use that in any example. I mean,
Right.
look at people who. I mean, I hate to go political with it, but let's just go political with it because we're real on this show. If you see a parent who's all forget Joe Biden for Christian terms,
What do the kids do?
then the kids go to school. Well, forget Joe Biden, or if they're Donald Trump's yada yada yada, then the kid goes to school. Donald Trump's yada yada yada.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's just a good example of how negativity is spread. But I mean,
But it hurts. It will, like, it hurts the church and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so that's why I like say if I'm talking bad about the church with Georgia all the time, I don't like how to do this. I don't like how to do that. Well, then what is my kid gonna grow up saying? Well, I don't like how to do this. I don't like how to do that. And then it disrupts.
then his friend circle. Well, we don't like this. We don't like that. We don't like. It's just like a cancer.
It is. You're missing the point. It's like you're missing the point of all this. So, we need the church. We are the church of Christ. We need to work.
Now we're not saying don't call out evil. Evil needs to be called out.
Oh yeah, I was just talking about like little things.
Yeah. Now if you got a pastor in there that's saying stuff like Satan's God and we honor him, then we need to call that out.
Yeah, obviously.
That's simple.
Yeah, obviously, but it all comes with love and truth.
Yes.
So then he did talk about this. He said, look, it's going to get harder sometimes. He said, and he explained about the accidents happened in the house.
Yeah.
He said, but be consistent. Be consistent. Don't give up. You need to be a man of your word. Basically, is what he was saying, and that's pretty much all I had.
Yeah.
And he just said he just kind of recapped and said we don't have a lot of time with our children. I mean, and that, like, Riley's 13 already.
Old.
And I know it is crazy, and like, so it just there's not much time with them. So the time that we do have, we got to pour the gospel into them and teach them, why we're here and stuff.
Definitely had to be intentional, especially with your wife and your kids and your community. But the only way to do that is to pour into yourself, especially in a masculine environment. Men, you need to invest in your masculinity. You need to go to these things like men's conferences and learn how to be a man for God. And I mean, just first requirement of that is making sure you do serve God. That He's the Lord of your life and you're not.
Yeah. Where's that sheet you had?
This one? Oh no, this one.
Yeah, that one right here. Because I wanted to talk a little bit about the speakers. About just a recap of what they kind of had to say. So the first guy, Jarrett, he was he talked about a little bit what we talked about in the last episode about enticement, entitlement, pride. He really hit on the lust of the flesh for men. And he said all these young people who think that when you get older, you'll just
The desire goes away.
your desire goes away. He said, buckle up. He said it never stops.
Gets worse.
It gets worse. Or I mean, you may know how to deal with it, combat it, mentally, but it was all about winning the battle in your mind. And he goes hands, heart, hands, or head, heart, hands.
Yeah, this is your head. Not.
Yeah. Why did this?
This is not your hands.
Anyway, so battle in your mind, you can win it. There's a lot of, there's just so many verses about that.
He gave a lot of.
I know there was so many. I couldn't even write them all down. He gave like 1,000 verses.
The second one,
Gavin
Spinney, is that how you say it? It was crazy. Like, so here recently on a podcast, we told a story or a joke. It was about the captain who went into battle with the red shirt and brown pants. He told that story.
I know.
And then he also mentioned a lot of stuff we've said in the podcast. I looked over at Trey Deer and I was like, that man watched our podcast.
Maybe so.
He may have. I don't know. It was really funny. Like,
it was
a lot of stuff he mentioned.
Yeah.
Then Jace, for us, I mean, so, our parents and grandparents, they all followed Billy Graham for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Us here in Louisiana, the people that, had a really big biblical impact was the Robertson family for a lot of people. And, I enjoyed hearing him, and you really get to see his heart for people.
Yeah.
Because he does it for free. I mean, he went there, he didn't charge to go in there and speak, but his job is to make sure that you know who Jesus Christ is. That's probably the most important. The way that he talked, that's the most important thing in his life is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make sure he makes Jesus known.
And just a few points from that. He said, every human comes to 3 questions, and if they haven't thought about it, they will at some point. How did we get here? What are we doing here?
And how are you leaving?
And how are we leaving? And when you die, he said, because everybody has an expiration date, And so he just went over that. And a lot of times he said that opens up a conversation with people to share the gospel with them. He said, how did we get here? He said, because every other thing besides creation, he said, is just ludicrous.
Well, what was the story he said when he was talking? He was in school and 7th or 8th grade teacher was like, oh, this particle splashed with this particle and made a big bang. Yeah. And he said, I just raised my hand and said, well, where did the stuff that splashed with the stuff come from?
Yeah, she said, don't worry about that.
Don't worry about it. He goes, that's what I'm worried about. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was. But
Jace was...
But it's so true. We know that nothing can come from nothing.
Nothing can't create nothing.
Nothing can't create nothing. Something, and a design points to a designer. We know that because of those just like simple facts right here. I mean, objectively, of course, my opinion doesn't matter about that. It's just it makes nothing else makes sense because it's impossible. And like I said, a design points to a designer, and so that's where we came from. He said that's the first thing, is where we came from. God created us in His image, right? And He said, what are we doing here? To point people to Jesus. He says from basically from the fall of man to now. He's like, that's why we're here. Jesus Christ came, and we need to tell people about Him. And he said, for those who don't believe on how we're leaving, they have no hope, because that's super depressing. This is just me talking, but like, if you go throughout your entire life, and then you're like, well, when I die, and then nothing happens, then why does your life have more value than a crawfish? Because right now they're kind of like, they're pretty valuable right now.
They are. So, I don't know. Crawfish might be worth more.
Yeah.
I got a lot of life insurance on me, but I don't even know if it compares to the price of crawfish at this point.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break. All right, we're back. Ready to get coffee, change out a battery.
Coffee is life. So there was one other speaker there, and if you've ever heard of a Tony Evans Bible, which is actually the brand that we got for my son.
Now, he was the chaplain, right, for the Dallas Cowboys.
So Tony Evans is not the one who spoke. His son, Jonathan Evans, did. He's the chaplain right now for the Dallas Cowboys. Yep. But he's also played for the Chargers and
Redskins.
And the Redskins.
Yeah, and so when he had I've never heard of him because I don't follow football. I never got into it, I guess, but it was, some of the stuff he was saying was like pretty relatable even.
Yeah.
But Man, he had so much to say. We can just kind of condense it a little bit, but
Go.
yeah, go.
Go.
Yeah. But what are some of the things that stuck out to you? I guess just at the beginning.
Well, and I'm obviously not going to say this as elegantly as he did, but he was talking about the voices of God when you're trying to hear it. He said, don't sit here and think that everything that you want to do is God's voice. He said, basically, what people will do is they'll say, like, let's just say, I have a desire to quit my job,
Right.
and I pray about it, and I don't do any listening. But something happens. I was like, "Oh, that was God talking." He said, "No, that's you forging God's name on that signature."
Yeah, that's right.
He said, "That's your own mind."
He said there's a reason why it sounds like you.
Yeah.
Because it is you.
And he said, "God's voice is not going to be comfortable.
Yeah, I know, because he's not.
He doesn't call us to comfort."
Right. He said, he's gonna make you uncomfortable because that's and your weakness. He is made strong, and that's the whole reason why he's doing all this about. And we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday after the conference, but I did think it was going to be the kind of the NFL story about how
Yeah, I thought he was
get
gonna
rich, get famous,
chase women,
yeah.
and now he's here. That's exact. Not gonna lie, that's the attitude I went in with it. Was seeing him was like, oh, he's just a football player. We're gonna hear a story about him chasing women.
Yeah, but it wasn't like that at all.
No, not at all, man. He had such a humble and just loving heart for God, and it was incredible.
That he did, and he was talking about he went to seminary and all this kind of stuff. But now he says that God's just waiting on you to make a move. He said because and that's why he said go. He gave the story in Genesis about Abraham and Abraham. He said the first part of that is go. He said he went to his dad and they spent like 2 hours looking at the word go, using the exhaustive concordance
and trying to figure out what that meaning of that word meant.
And it just meant go. it just meant go. And it's a couple of times I've done some studies and I'm like, what does this word mean? Like, and it meant what it meant. Yeah. So, but anyway, sometimes God is waiting for us to make the move so he can make his move.
Yeah.
He's always working and he's always there, but we obviously have free will to sit on our butts and do nothing or to take action. And so then he can take action.
And correct me on how he said this. I know I'm not going to say this exactly right, but he was talking about the order in which God accomplishes things. He said, we want to see the results.
Show.
Yeah, we want the show before the go.
Yeah.
If I think that's how he said it. But he said, that's not how it works. We have to go on faith in order to see what God has in store. And he said, sometimes you may not even see it. And he used Moses' example. They disobeyed God. So God took him up there and said, hey, there's the promised land. You're not going to enter it.
Yeah, right.
But the promise was that they would, come to the land of milk and honey and, just all this land that they would come into. But because they disobeyed God, that generation had to die off. Right. Now the promise was there, and the promise was not broken. But this generation who didn't want to trust in God didn't get to receive that blessing.
Right. Do you remember what chapter he was in Genesis?
I do not. But I like the fact that he said that, sometimes we may not even see, and we've talked about this before, but you may not even see the fruition come of a seed you planted. Right. You may be long dead. You may have some conversation that you have with somebody, something that you did introduce somebody to Christ. It may be several generations, but something that you were involved in.
Right.
Cause somebody to believe in God or cause a God effect to happen.
Just to emphasize what you said about we how we want to see the result before we even make a move. One story that he said about his father was he said, "How did you get from like, was it he grew up in Baltimore,
Baltimore, or Detroit?"
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know the story, so like it's just. But I just remember the key points of it. He said, "How did you end up basically in the hood, from the hood to here?" And he said, "Go look at
Hebrew 11.
Hebrew 11. Yeah, let's just turn there real quick.
I believe it was where it was at.
Either that or 12 or And
Oh no,
forgot
it
my
was
notebook.
no, it was 11 because I think is this the one he used? Verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was
Yes.
tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promise offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, "And Isaac your seed shall be called," concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense.
Yeah, so he said, you know, he said, what do you think? He said, well, faith. He said, yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
He said, it's by faith. He said that he got from where he was at to where he is now. And so likewise, Jonathan had to know he had to step out in faith. Now, he did tell a story one time about this, about they were playing against the Ravens. And he said, man, he was like, man, it's so hard to like not say everything that he said, but I mean, we can't take up another hour.
Basically, there was a play called out, and I don't remember the play, but basically it would take him trying to run through
Ray Lewis.
Ray Lewis. I
Yeah.
said Ray Charles.
Ray-
It's like that would be hard.
So anyway,
Yeah, run through Ray Lewis. And
Ray Lewis is a big boy.
yeah, like muscles on top of muscles type guy.
Yeah, he's a big
But
dude.
anyway, so the Ray Charles thing got me cut. Oh, I gotta get my composure back. Hold on.
You just ain't right, bro. I know. I was like, you know, Ray Charles is blind.
Dude.
I can't help it.
He just talked.
Should that cut out or should that keep?
I don't know. I'm just keeping it in.
Okay.
I'm just keeping it in.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah. Okay, we're back. I lost my Skittles. I had to find them and come back.
you lost more than your Skittles.
No, but so he had to run through, and he was not big at all. Jonathan Evans was not a very big guy, but the play that was called out, he didn't know who he was having to run through or run past or whatever. He had to trust the coach, knew what was best, kind of thing.
Yeah, and he said this. He's like, and it was kind of like it was like a man's man speech. You know, he basically
Yeah.
said, he's like, it's your job to step out in faith. He said, but he said, did you think the coach pulled me aside and said, hey man, you don't have to run this play if you don't want to. How do you feel about this? You know, and he kind of, you know, said a little extra stuff, but he was like, that coach did not care about how I felt about the play. He said he called it and he said, yes, and that hit hurt. He said, now we're not going to talk about who won the game, but he said, we got the first down.
Yeah.
So he said, but that's what it is. It's like, objectively, God loves us, but our feelings,
No,
sometimes-
he's not worried about our feelings. He's worried about our obedience,
yeah, our obedience and like,
trusting in faith.
and his plan. And obviously he played football, so he compared it a lot to football. But it's basically essential. We're trying to reach the touchdown, but it's God's plan. God's got the playbook. God's got all this, and we're the players.
How did he say it? He said he gave us he gave a speech that his coach gave him. Basically, they
I know, I
were
can't
going
remember
through
it.
they were going through a workout camp, and you know they were it was what 6 weeks of basically torture.
Yeah,
What was it? 3 practices, 4 practices a day, something like that. And basically, you know, by day 3 they were all exhausted.
yeah,
And then, you know, day 8 come and he come in there and he says, you know, I've got the book. He said, the only thing that I need y'all for or whatever, however he worded it, he says, because I saw potential in you.
right.
He said, but with your potential, you're going to have to trust my plan because I've got the book of, you know, all this. If you obey the book, if you go by my plan, if you listen to my prompting
Right.
and trust in me, then you'll be great.
Yeah, but
Kind of
he's
thing. And he says it a lot better than I did, but
yeah, and it was essentially that about how like you already the greatness is already. Well, let me put it this way. He said you're not striving or working towards victory. He said you're working from victory.
there you go.
Jesus Christ has already won victory. And so as a Christian, you have to understand that's where you're coming from. That's where your power is. You don't have power besides through him. So, you know, spiritually speaking, if you give your life over to Jesus Christ, and just, just give him a little bit, just step out in that faith, you have victory over death. And like, like I said, in your eternal life, it's not the end. And then now, but you'll have power over your addictions, because you're coming from victory. You already have the victory. It's basically like, I guess, already knowing you're going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I guess, and he kind of said something like that. So, but,
The only people that know that is going to be Tom Brady.
I'm pretty.
Deflategate joke?
What?
No football fans.
I'm not a football fan.
It was a joke.
Somebody probably got it.
You could say the football jokes just fell flat with you.
So did.
Oh.
So did. Not real sure where you're coming from with that. But anyway.
Somebody will. Anybody who watches football will get this. There was a rumor that during the Super Bowl, the Patriots deflated some of the balls that made it easier for Tom Brady to throw and catch and everything else, and there was a big stink about it.
Was it true?
That's between you, the NFL, and the God y'all pray to. Don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not getting in on that.
I don't know.
I've said as much as I want to about that.
Okay. Well, that was a recap of our men's conference at the Forge.
Basically, the mindset of this is find you one and go do it.
Yeah.
It'll build you some spiritual, physical, and mental resilience.
But besides like a men's retreat that lasted several days, I've never gone to like a 1-day conference, and it was really good. So you got a lot out of it. But anyway,
pour into yourself. If you got conferences around you that are men conferences, that are biblical men conferences, go to them. Find some things, some men podcasts. Like I said, I suggest the Undaunted Life, Kyle Thompson's podcast. I think it's incredible. He hits topics from a real world's perspective and puts a man's viewpoint on it. And I mean, it's good. Some of our favorite ones, the Unashamed, the Duck Call Room podcast, do things that just, build you up and get you closer to the Lord and, teach you what it's like to be a biblical man.
Nope, that's right. So thanks for watching Modern Day Messengers. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Thank you for all the support that you've given us. And we appreciate every bit of it. And there's apparently a notification bell. Someone told me about that the other day. You can hit a notification bell under there and it'll tell you when we post. Now, we didn't post one last week because I'm in the process of moving and trying to put my house up for sale and jobs.
Be honest, he was just lazy.
Yeah, sure.
I was like, let's go. I'm ready to pull aside. Oh, I don't know. The weather's bad. Oh, I don't know.
No, I'm just at a really busy season. I'm just at a really busy season in life.
We do our best to get y'all one every week, but, we are human.
But anyway, thank y'all, and we'll see you next time.
Have a blessed day.